Aside from the flagrant hypocrisy that comes with the US government, the only government in history to have ever dropped a nuclear bomb on civilians, attempting to control what other governments can have the same weapons, Donald Trump's calls for
fire and fury
are evidence not only that he's been taking Game of Thrones too seriously, but of ineffective and entirely immoral policies. The United States government and its military lost all claims to moral superiority when they decided to wreak fire and fury on North Koreans in the 1950s in a war they shouldn't have been in to begin with. They killed millions of civilians, nearly 20% of the entire population, and still lost the war, letting the regime retain its power when stopping the spread of communism was the whole point of their intervention to begin with. This fire and fury to master nuclear war killed or wounded over 200,000 Japanese citizens against the advice of revered General Dwight D. Eisenhower, and led the US to test hydrogen bombs on islands, burning and poisoning the people living there. This fire and fury lost the Vietnam War while showering innocent civilians in napalm and constant air bombardment, another failed war that cost tens of thousands of American lives and destroyed their health and the health of generations of Vietnamese civilians. Fire and fury has led to stalemate and failure in Iraq and Afghanistan and the Middle East as a whole, killing hundreds of thousands of innocent people. America's lust for violence and power has driven the US government and its officials to lie about war, as with Vietnam, or at the very least to see direct threats where there are none, creating fire and fury directed right back at the United States. But it's not just fire and fury that dooms this backwards foreign policy. After years of imposing sanctions on North Korea to stop them from pursuing weapons, they're still pursuing weapons. I wonder if this has anything to do with America's saber-rattling over the years. Sanctions against Iran haven't achieved the United States' hegemonic goals and serve mostly to harm the Iranian people. They didn't stop Castro or Saddam Hussein, and they provoked the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. Look, the North Korean government is oppressive and authoritarian, and if you don't know much about the extent of this control, you should really look into it. But to believe that more of the same violent, threatening policies will do anything to quell tyranny as the US becomes increasingly tyrannical in its fetish for power is not only ignorant of history, but dooming the present to the same aggression, war, and destruction humanity has faced for thousands of years. What fire and fury,
the likes of which this world has never seen before,
does Trump hope to surpass if he makes good on his threat? The US nukes in Japan that killed or wounded over 200,000 people? Its viciousness in countless other countries? Hitler's tirades? Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor? Either he's just as bad as these warmongering regimes, or he's grossly hyperbolic, and neither is acceptable. The North Korean people are already undermining their government with free and black markets, and they're slowly freeing their minds from the staunch indoctrination forced upon them. Let them fight their own battle against a government that was literally caught photoshopping a missile launch just a few years ago. In the meantime, if you're afraid of North Korea, even though Vice Chairman of the US Joint Chiefs of Staff General Paul Selva said in July that they lack the ability to actually hit the US, you were probably also terrified of Saddam or Iran or Gaddafi or Assad or all of the above. And it's time to stop pretending that more of the same saber-rattling and threats of violence will produce any different results than further radicalizing other governments and people and plunging the world further into chaos.